Thank you for being here this morning. My name is Nicole Hendrix. I am the Executive Director of the BRIC Foundation. And I'll just kick it off to my partners to introduce themselves on this call. Alison Mann.
I'm Alison Mann. You can call me Al for the day since we have another Allison on the call. I am also the co-founder of the BRIC Foundation.
Popcorn to Allison.
And I'm Allison Frenzel. You can call me Frenzel. And I'm the Arts, Media, and Entertainment Industry Sector Lead for the California Department of Education, and also co-founder with the BRIC team of the Entertainment Equity Alliance. Oh, Karla.
Karla Sayles. I am the Deputy Director of the California Film Commission out of the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development.
Thank you all so much for being here. As you can tell, we are a little warming up this morning. Yesterday we had day one of the BRIC Summit. It was our industry day. And it is a long day of inspiring talks and research and brainstorming. In a couple of hours, we'll have all the rewatch videos up on our site, so please check them out. And I was just wondering, maybe like a warm and fuzzy way to start, what was y'all's favorite moment yesterday? I'm going Alison Mann.
I think our AI panel, like that was really riveting conversation. I also felt like there was some hope through those conversations and some grounded in like, there's a path forward that didn't feel as scary. And I think there's, I don't know, it just gave me a little bit more hope, even if it felt like a juxtaposition of direness in there. But I think everybody who was on that panel came with a very interesting perspective and wanting to protect, or like in a way where this tool won't go away, but a way of like, what is it going to be, and like trying to create kind of, what am I thinking of, like boundaries around it, or like structure, guardrails. Yeah. So I think that everybody had like that perspective. So I think that was really good. And I'm always down for our like ending keynote fireside chats with Janelle and Karen. I love that conversation.
Watch for sure, everyone. And that goes up in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Miss Frenzel. So for those of you that don't know, Frenzel's on our advisory board. We built the apprenticeship program with her, and she is just generally like, hey, I need someone. Can you talk right now? So Frenzel definitely did that a couple of times. Frenzel, what was your favorite part of the day?
Hey, 10:30 p.m. Plan C, facilitator. I have three favorite parts. The first, because I was Plan C and ended up facilitating the executive breakfast, I think the conversation was amazing, and we have such great action items. So the one thing I love about the BRIC Summit is it's about action. It's not just a bunch of talking. It's always about talking, and then what are we going to do about it, or what are the solutions we can come up with, which kind of steers. It's like, while I'm on their advisory, they are also a huge part of our advisory, and the industry professionals that they bring together, and the information and resources really help steer my work for the year as well. So the workshops across the board and the executive breakfast went after the keynote, or not the keynote, but after the second panel, we had an amazing workshop, and we're able to just really hash through some solutions. So I really like the interactivity of the summit. And then I also, of course, Karen Horn and Janelle English are both absolutely incredible, insightful speakers, and to end the day with their expertise and their experiences was really an amazing privilege to be able to watch that conversation. So
thank you. We did something different this year. My team is going to be dropping into the chat because obviously most of you were not there yesterday. And so we wanted to make the workshops more accessible for you no matter where you are in the world. So we're going to be dropping the workshop deep dive into the chat. And that actually has a way for you to see some of the topics that we discussed and for you to input and share your own solutions with us so you can be a part of the BRIC Summit findings. So Danny, if you could please put that in the chat, that'd be wonderful.
I also have to like shout out to the international audience here. It's crazy.
Yeah.
All over the world. Love it.
really am happy that you are here. We really are happy that you are here to spend
On
the
a Saturday.
Saturday. And
Wow.
yeah,
So I'm going to
Karla.
double down just on the interactivity pieces because I thought that the questions were so thought-provoking. And in both of the workshops where you were just in a group of people randomly assigned, I loved that. It was people coming from different experiences and backgrounds, really kind of offering different solutions from their own experiences with some questions that I actually thought were really relevant in terms of thinking about how you find solutions to some challenging problems around DEI, around access, around skills. So I really loved the interactivity and the AI panel. I mean, the authenticity truly of the presenters and the passion that they brought. I mean, it truly was, I think, a highlight. I think it's one of the big, fears in terms of how it's going to impact the industry. So to both, I think Allison, you put it exactly how I was feeling, to hear a little bit of hope, and also to understand some of the real world impacts and the real world applications for how it's already being used, I thought was just really helpful.
Yeah, I am. And honestly, like, thank you so much for being here and being like, just jumping into this work with us. We are so excited to have you be here with us. So one of the things that our summit theme this year is, because we have a theme every year that we try to put all of our programming around, and this year's theme is perseverance. And so I don't know if we want to talk about a moment where we persevered in our early careers. I guess I'm gonna go and I'm gonna be vulnerable with this group because I haven't had enough coffee this morning. So I was teaching at the Apple Store in college. I was teaching Final Cut, and someone came in that ended up being the creative director of a television station. And I was teaching them. They're like, "Hey, why don't you come and teach everybody?" Because this is right when that nonlinear like transition from tape to tape was happening. Come in and do that. And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I could intern there." And so as that conversation was starting, I actually got let go and like got laid off from Apple. And I had never cried over a breakup before, but man, I cried over losing something that I loved, right? And it still is a retail job, even though it's a great retail job and you get to teach, right? You get to touch all the new software and hardware. And so I ended up just like putting my whole self into that job at the TV station and training and like those connections and working really hard. And it changed my entire life. It got me to LA, like, so it was definitely like a rock bottom, forcing you to like put your all into something new. And it really worked out and became like the love of my life in a lot of ways. So anybody else feel like sharing a perseverance early career moment?
Well, I went to an art high school, and I wanted to be I wanted to go into 2D animation. And my teacher at the time was like, 2D animation's dead. You have to pick a different career. But she was unable to tell me like what the pathways into our industry was. So I come up from a lower middle class family in Northern California. And my parents, I was the first one to go to a 4-year college. And so I didn't really have anybody in entertainment. It was definitely felt like a fortress with no doors. And so, but I knew it was something I wanted to be. Like, everything I watched on Nickelodeon inspired me. Everything from Disney inspired me. Like, I wanted to be there. I wanted to work. And so she told me that, I was also rescuing seals at the time. I worked at the Marine Mammal Rescue Center in Sausalito, California, and I did that for 3 years. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to go into animation, I'm going to be the next Jacques Cousteau, and I'm going to do marine biology and documentary filmmaking. So I went to my local junior college and started taking marine biology classes. And then I went on a boat and realized I can't be on boats. I just get super seasick. So then like that career kind of just like was whatever. And then I transferred to Columbia College in Chicago, where I ended up majoring in business of the arts. And during my time in school, my senior year of school, I interned at Nickelodeon Animation Studio in finance. And I'm a kid who was dyslexic, learning disabilities, like visual is my love language. And painting and art, all those things. And math was not my strong suit. And I ended up interning in finance. And it was like, why finance? But it got me into the door of Nickelodeon, and it solidified the fact that animation was my place since I was 7 years of age. That's where I wanted to be. And so when I graduated from school, like during the rest of my years in school, I kept in touch with everybody. And then I got offered 2 jobs at Nick, one being a PA on Go Diego Go, and the other one was working in special events. Um, and in that job, I got all the portfolios and from all the artists, and I would divide them up and give them out to all the different productions to review to help staff. And I chose that job. That was a little bit more like a page. I had kind of a high level overview of that studio, and that really set off my career. So even though it wasn't exactly the exact role I thought I would end up doing, I ended up in a position that was even more true to my disposition and my personality, and really launched me to where I am today. And so I kind of, I don't know, that was kind of my journey into our world.
Allison,
Popcorn to the,
Yeah.
huh?
I was like, whoever wants to go next with that one. Yeah.
I'm gonna pop in because I just have to say that I have so Al and I have this really weird kind of life overlap in a lot of different ways, and Nicole and I do too. And it's funny when I hear their stories, because I'm always like, oh yeah, and that. So I have extreme auditory processing issues and was extremely ADHD, still am, in school, but always knew how to kind of play the game. And so one of the things that I realized early on is that, like, even if you don't end up where you really wanted to be, there's always a path that opens before you that is something you might not have ever expected. So every single step along my journey, like from post high school, so I also wanted to go to art school. That's all I want. I got into well, not art school, actually, a liberal arts school, but like with an fine arts emphasis. Got into Reed College early decision. Haha, my family had no money to pay for education at a private liberal arts school, so I could not go. Ended up taking a year off and doing whatever, and went to the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, which is a super alternative college that does not have grades and or classes. You're in programs. I did not get into the arts program, and I ended up in this really weird program called Restoring the American West. Right. So it was my only choice. Turns out I was able to, Nicole, do you know this story? Yeah, you do.
No, I'm here for it though. Tell me.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. This is how I got into teaching, by the way, because I never wanted to teach. I'm the oldest of 6. I had no interest in ever working with children. I actually was banned from babysitting my siblings at one point in my punk rock days. So ended up at the Evergreen State College, didn't get any arts program, ended up in this wacky space where I ended up volunteering. Part of our program was all project based. So I ended up on the Skokomish Reservation in a Head Start preschool, working with them and this is an indigenous reservation in Washington State, and working with them to to take these oral stories and put them into children's books for the Head Start preschool. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I actually like kids. I might want to do something like that, but I would have never known had I not failed at the things that I really wanted to do. So fast forward, wanted to move to San Francisco. This is the 90s. Couldn't afford to live in San Francisco in the 90s. It was the .com era. Drove up the 101 freeway until I could afford a little apartment. Ended up where Alison Mann grew up randomly. We did not know each other, but my best friends were her prom queens. And I just decided to go to community college and do what I needed to do. Took all dance and art classes and psychology, because every college student takes psychology, many major in it, and ended up teaching in Sonoma County. And so that was my journey into education. And so I was in my early 20s, finished at Sonoma State University after being in community college for a long time, because I took a lot of dance and art classes, which doesn't get you your general ed classes. And started at a continuation high school and loved it. I loved working with students who were more like me as learners, very hands-on, atypical, needed to be able to craft their own journeys. And then once again, got involuntarily transferred against my will into a contemporary, or not contemporary, but a traditional high school environment, and didn't want to do that. And when I was there, I was able to create a new performing and production program, which ended up being a model program for the state of California, which is how I ended up at the Department of Ed. So every single step was like not what I wanted, but it ended up to lead me exactly where I am today. So that was my very nonlinear trajectory.
Karla, I'm excited to hear yours.
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting because I feel like you all kind of knew that art was a part of your life from the beginning. And for me, it was kind of the complete opposite. I mean, I went to college in Chicago. I went to Northwestern, undecided, not really knowing what I wanted to do or what I wanted to study. And in an odd way, I'm totally with you, Allison, on like life has an interesting way of like bringing you things that you need when you need it. Um, and so I ended up really learning about the study of government, and frankly, like fell in love with government and policy and was like, oh, I want to figure out how to change the world because I love this idea that you can change the world through government and policy and public service. So I ended up studying political science and then graduate. And I'm like, okay, but like, how do I do that? Like, now what? And really found myself kind of struggling through figuring that out. Like there wasn't a lot of mentorship. There wasn't a lot of people to ask in terms of like figuring out, how to go about doing that or what that even looked like. And I tried, I think, a lot of different types of roles. Like my first role was working for a lobbying firm. And I realized really quickly, like, I didn't like that. That didn't, like I was learning skills, which was great, but I wasn't feeling that sense of connection to the work that really makes you excited to like get up and like feel like you're making an impact in your community. And so I was like, okay, that's not it. And then that's when Obama was elected, and I quit my job and decided to just move to Washington, D.C. Because I'm like, sure, why not? Like, why not go be there and see, what can happen when you just go and are where there is a lot of momentum. Failed miserably, did not get a job in Washington, D.C. Was there for like 4 or 5 months trying to kind of figure out like, okay, well, what could I do? Again, just kind of feeling like I was, scrambling in a way to like find my place. And then I got a call to come and work on a political campaign back in Los Angeles. So I left my apartment that was set up in Washington, D.C., and I literally like, flew back home, like all the money I had left in my savings account to work on this political campaign for someone who was going to be, if they got elected, in Washington, D.C. I'm like, great, that's like my in. No, they ended up losing. Like that didn't work out for me. And that's when I started just sending out a whole bunch of resumes. And I got a call to work here locally in Los Angeles County. That was kind of this, random gift because they had a role on the health policy team. I didn't know anything about health policy, and was like, okay, life is, bringing me health policy now. I'm going to learn about this and I'm going to get really invested. And I think it was through that work, interestingly, I got to work very closely with the Art Council, which now is like the art department, actually in doing a lot of remodeling of our health buildings and hospitals. And I got to, I served on the team that really was involved with student art and bringing art in, and art as a mental health opportunity. And so really kind of exposed me to art in a really different kind of way. And I spent 7 years at the county, and a friend ended up sending me this role at Warner Brothers saying like, oh, you should apply for it. And I'm like, but I don't know anything about entertainment, like nothing. I had applied for entertainment jobs early on when I was like, just kind of throwing things. And obviously nobody called me back because I had zero experience. And so this time around, I went in for a government affairs role where I'm like, okay, this is about government. I know government. It's like the one thing I know. And was so shocked when I was hired because I, again, like knew nothing about production. I knew nothing about the space, but my boss was so willing to teach me. They're like, you can come, and if you have an interest, you can really learn and be open to the experience. And that is where I found my love and passion for, it kind of merges both. Like I was still in the government space, but in the government space, really supporting the arts. It's where I learned a lot about how challenging it is to get into careers around the arts, and like really started working with all different parts of the studio at Warner Brothers to see how I could help, not because it was my job, but just because, when you're passionate about it, you're like willing to raise your hand and say like, oh, I'll help. Like I know it's not my job, but like let me jump in, let me figure it out. And so it's kind of crazy all these years later. My mom always says, like, of all of my children, I would have never imagined that you would have ended up, like you would have been the one to end up in entertainment, because I was so not an artistic person. And I really found just a love and passion for this industry. And even still now that I'm in the governor's office back in government, it's like I kind of feel like now it's kind of bringing, the both sides of, my government background and my love for entertainment and film and TV. It's like, who knew all those years of like watching everything I could on TV would end up serving me, in the long run, just for like a love for this industry. So, I'm a big believer that like life doesn't often go the way you plan. But the universe finds ways to bring you what you need in, I think, sometimes the most unusual ways and at the most unusual times. And I was like so glad that at all the different junctures, I was just kind of open to things that even were outside of my wheelhouse, like, okay, sure, I'll take this health policy, job. And then I ended up on the Warner Brothers team trying to figure out how to do production during COVID. And they're like, wait, don't you know health policy? I'm like, actually, I do. Let's draw on some of this experience that I never thought I would need in this new job, So it's just kind of crazy how, like, all these years later, like, life has a great way of like helping you tap into all the different things you've learned and experienced along the way.
Can I say something about that, Nicole, really quickly?
Yeah.
Because she just brought up a really good point. Well, first of all, like, so none of us knew we were going to end up where we are, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, we came together in ways that, like, you have to be willing to, like, do the thing that might not be your first choice to get to meet people, to find those intersections. Like, that is so interesting, because I think that's what all of us have experienced in our career journeys. But what Karla said, I just want to have to piggyback on the COVID situation, because so I ended up in order to get my job, I had to get a master's degree. And I was like, what's the easiest master's degree I can get? Like, literally, like, and it was a great program, don't get me wrong. But I was like, okay, online, I just need to do it so I can get the job. So I did this job in educational, or I did a master's degree in educational technology and instructional design. I didn't, and Nicole was like, heard this story. I didn't want to do any other projects. Like, I was like, none of this is relevant. And my teachers or my professors were so awesome. They were like, just it's fine. Just make up your own things and it'll work. And they let me do my own research and made it relevant. And so also it was like the trust of the leaders in your, like, trusting you to like take that initiative, even if it's not their idea or their way. And this is for the teachers out there, because sometimes your students have their own ways of doing things, right? Like, so I made it through that master's degree. I'm like, I'll never use this. I'm going to work in government now. Like, I'll never use a master's in instructional design and educational technology. COVID hit. Guess who was the only one in my division with any knowledge of distance learning and had to like rally an entire like CDE, Department of Education task force on distance learning in the middle of a global pandemic, with every division, all hands on deck, finding out, like trying to figure out how do auto shop teachers teach during a pandemic, like curating weekly lists of like lessons, like it was insane, but like the kinds of another situation where like you never thought you would use the thing, and then you end up in a space where it's just like, so diversified experience is really important, I'm just gonna say. And sorry, Nicole, I just had to like.
No, that flows. We'll flow that. I too am neurodivergent, and I was not good at school in terms of like, if I'm already working kind of in my field and I'm doing all these short films on the side, I don't really want to listen to your history class. And so like, as it came to like, huge shout out to Steve Buss at Sacramento State, who like worked with me and was like, all right, we can independent study this short film you did. And like, the only reason I graduated is because that man let my passion count for college credit. And then we were able to convince, so like 100%, like just seeing where you are and just like working, like having your work ethic speak for itself. And then also being kind, because like, transitioning to our next last question, is how can you arm yourself with like knowledge, whether that be industry or government or education, to kind of get that job. And for me, I never knew how to get in, like being from like Sacramento State, like I was the first like graduating class for film students. Like we were building that program, and it was really cool because I definitely like, I like building things. I'm a builder. And so like getting a part to like build that college class was great. But what that meant was there were no alumni in LA to receive me. There was nobody to like show me the way. So many of you from across the country, your first like an alumni networking thing will be like, even some of our interns that we've hired have been like people's alumni, right? So I went to LA, no connections in film. A lot of my first gigs were like neighbors, jobs on Craigslist, like random staff me up things, and it really is like, and then I started realizing that might not have knowledge, but I was good at people because I changed schools like every year of my life. And so I haven't met a stranger. I don't know strangers. Make that appropriate for what I'm trying to say. But like I got a job in line at a taco stand. I got a job eavesdropping at a coffee shop. I got a job at like a bar. Like I was on a date, and then I was like, oh wait, I can turn this into a job interview. I did have some questionable job interviews that were actually dates, because this is pre-Me Too. But anyways, so I think that there's definitely like, I wish that I'd had that knowledge. So I don't know, Alison Mann, any type of advice for how we can leverage knowledge of industry or whatever to get that job?
Well, I kind of see like what we do as like almost like game design. Like it's almost like every chapter, every level, it's like a level design. And like you have to conquer certain things at every level, every stage of your life to get to that next step. Sometimes that is like getting over your own fears or your own, like whatever is blocking from you, from whatever you need to achieve. Nicole and I talk a lot about manifestation, which I really believe in. I believe in like there was when I was little, I wrote in my like little kid journal, I was like 8, that I wanted to have twins. And then today I have twins. Like I don't know how much of that the universe really, I don't know if that's completely coincidental, but like I don't know. Sometimes I really think the universe listens to like the things you put out, and like, and a lot of that has to do with sharing, right? Like I think what Nicole was saying is like being kind of observant of like conversations you're having and pivoting those things to benefit whatever direction you're kind of wanting to go in, and being yes and. We talk about like really being a yes and not shutting down opportunity or conversations, or pathways. Like for me, like people for animation call me the Kevin Bacon of animation, because I will like meet with anybody. I will break down doors so that people have access points. Like I will like, I just believe in that accessibility. But I've also yes and through my career, and I've worked at Nickelodeon, Disney, Paramount. I've worked in gaming. I've worked at so many places, and it wasn't because I wasn't loyal to those companies, but I lead a life of curiosity and like wanting to like collect, just like Pokemon, like collect people, collect knowledge, like as much as I can. And I think that really served the ultimate, like where I am in my career and the people that I surround myself by. And the last thing is also about protecting my peace. Like I'm in my 40s now, and like I've surrounded myself with people who have similar mindset. And I know also what my boundaries are at this point, and where I don't want to put in energy anymore. Like, and I again want to protect my peace. But I think looking at your life as like a little bit of a yes and as you're navigating through each level, and being open here and open here, like can lead you to like certain things that you would have never even thought was possible. And I think that's even part of the joy. Like if everything is so mapped out, what is the fun? But if you're like, there's so many different like crosshairs and getting to your ultimate goal, then like go on the adventure. It's
But
awesome.
Allison, I like love something that you said there because I feel like something I didn't do enough of, and I see it. And I also, anytime anyone reaches out, like I'm so willing to like figure out how to connect them or figure out how to get them to the right person or talk to students because I never reached out and asked. And I don't know if it's like a cultural thing for me. Like, you know, I was not really like encouraged to do that as a young person of like, go out and like do the informational interviews and like try to learn from those who have the careers that seem interesting to you. And so I love this idea of manifestation because I also think that that is about like putting yourself out there and going after you know, like what you really want. And I think sometimes, especially when you are earlier in your career or, you know, coming out of college, like that's scary. It's scary to say, this is what I want. It's scary to say, like, this is where I want to go. And I've, you know, I feel like now all these years later, where I have so many people coming to me, it's like, you know, someone randomly links in, you know, sends me a LinkedIn message. And I feel like I hear this so often, like people are so willing to talk to you and share and give you information, like if you just reach out. So I just want to like double down on that because I think people are willing to do that. And so getting access to people, I think is one of the things that like I wish I would have done more. Just in my learning of like trying to kind of figure things out along the way.
Love it.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in too, because I think it's a good also transition point to talk about some of the stuff that we've built together just by looking at all of the things that we were hearing from all of the young people and individuals and their quests. So also though, I just want to go back to something we did yesterday because we did an activity where it was like, I hate icebreakers. Everyone who knows me knows that, but we did this activity that was like a good one. Like, okay, say your job in one word, right? Like one word. And so many, and this was with everybody in the room was, you know, at an executive level. And almost, I don't know, like 30% of that room used the word collaborator as the way that they would describe their job in one word, which was so interesting to me. And I think for us, for the BRIC team and Karla's story really fits into this, but we've done a lot to try and I think we're all problem solvers. I think we're all like, how do we, if there's something that is a barrier, how do we break it down? How do we knock it down? Whether that's for us, whether that's for the people that come to us, how do we help people solve their problems, right? And so my friend Vanessa, who has actually worked with Karla at Warner or works at Warner, but she's like, you're a fixer. Like that's what I call you to everybody, because like, it doesn't matter who comes to you with a situation, you help us fix it or navigate it in a way that's that makes sense, that's logical. And so that kind of brings me to the work BRIC and I did as a result of stuff we were hearing from the previous summits, and this a couple situations, but really ultimately like people who can't afford to go to a fancy art school, they can't afford to you know, have that whatever Otis degree or something that's going to get them seen for their first look and their first dream job, right? Like, how do we bring that quality of education into our free and public system in California? Like, that was the problem we needed to solve. How do we recreate, how do we like map industry learning to free and public education instead of depending on this extremely, I mean, this, sorry for anyone in the room, but college industrial complex, right? Where, I mean, I was luckily not in too much debt because I went to state school, but like still, like so many people leave school with so much debt that they can't ever really get out of that hole unless they're making six figures. And so how do we just make that not a problem, right? And so it's always going to be a problem, obviously, because there's always going to be bias. But ultimately, if we are able to like put funding into public schools, especially in California, in the United States, we call those Title I schools, schools serving communities that might be under-resourced, right? So how do we put money, resources in those schools and then create a bridge from those schools into jobs? And it starts with the education. Teachers need support in what do I cover in my classroom? If I've been out of the industry and I'm teaching, what do I cover to make sure students are prepared? How do I get the right industry connected professional development, like the BRIC Summit, like the AME Institute, to help really keep my practice fresh? And so we started to really make sure that those resources was available. First, by rewriting the California state standards. BRIC convened an advisory for the animation, games, and visual effects strand, and really mapping those to industry learnings. Then we decided after this summit, I think it was 2 years ago, that there needs to be an alternative even to any college. We can work with community colleges, but it shouldn't be a college dependent career journey for everyone. Cause like, I am honestly, like, I was really good at the game of school. I'm not going to lie. Like I did fine, but that was because I had teachers who let me do it my way. Right. And that's not always going to be the case. And so ultimately, like, how do we bridge school and work through an apprenticeship initiative, which we launched for the first ever in this industry? Like never, ever, ever has entertainment had a state and federally recognized registered apprenticeship program until we were able to create that. And with employers who are like, yep, you know what? Our journey was non-typical. That college degree didn't actually prepare us for this job, right? So let's figure out an alternative way to learn on the job and provide related instruction. And so, you know, to all the employers out there who have like tried this with us and pioneered it, thank you, because if it wasn't for you, like we wouldn't have the proof of concept and the success rate that we've had with our pioneer apprentices. But ultimately, like we want to see that grow. We're trying to make systems change happen. And none of us really are going to let the barriers that pop up every like literally like fires that ignite at every downturn of the economy, right? Or at the time, like when labor is in dispute and there's a strike and work's slow, like, okay, we pivot. And that's, I think, the common theme. And I don't know if Nicole, you want to say more about the apprenticeship, but I know we have 5 minutes before Q&A, so I'll shut up. But
well, no, actually, I want to talk to something Karla mentioned yesterday. And again, in a couple of hours, the change panel will be up that Karla spoke on yesterday. But one of the things we talked about to tie into is the people that can just like move to LA or move somewhere that, you know, can get a job in the mailroom paying peanuts, whatever, to work their way up. All those people have parent support to help pay their rent. And Karla, there's a lot of public funds available for artists, right? Like how can you explain what that means and how people could access some of that stuff?
Sure. I mean, I think that this is where, you know, a lot of the work, frankly, that the BRIC Foundation is doing and that others like the BRIC Foundation are doing, leveraging a lot of local funds, state funds through these types of programs, whether it's through apprenticeship programs or through training programs. I mean, even the California Film Commission offers, we fund a career readiness program and a career pathways program, two very different kinds of programs that our career readiness program brings folks to have exposure on sets, those kinds of things. And career pathways is much more of a deeper look at, you know, how are we looking at production accountants and training folks and bringing them up? How are we looking and supporting hands-on training of, you know, below the line, different types of roles. We partner with we partner with the Handy Foundation, some like the Post type of roles. But I do think one of the things that I was saying yesterday is that like sometimes the training is just not really enough. And so that's where being able to layer some of these programs on top of each other and really leverage, like the county might have some funds to support some additional wraparound services. Sometimes it's even as modest as like transportation, to get from your home to your internship and be able to afford that. So some of these programs exist. You can check out, I know the county has a website, the Department of Economic Opportunity, where they list some of their things. This is in Los Angeles. The state at the California Film Commission, we share a lot of these resources out through our programs. And frankly, Allison, I know you and your team do a lot of great work around, through this apprenticeship model and figuring out how to leverage some of these funds that I don't think have traditionally been intended for entertainment. And I think that that is more of what we're trying to do, which is like, there's a pot of money sitting somewhere. Great. How can we pull this resource to support folks in our industry? Because I think that people think about the entertainment industry and they think, oh, there's a lot of money there. We don't need to support them. And it's actually the opposite, right? It does sometimes, in the past, it has taken a lot of money to be able to, take that mailroom job or start as an assistant. And that's just not the reality of like the housing market here anymore. Not just here, but in so many places, right? So being able to really, I think, support folks to take these opportunities and minimize the risk, I think is really key, not just for employers, but also for students who are raising their hand and saying like, I want to do this, but I don't know how. So I think that's where government programs can really come in.
Yeah, and it's hard because we are California like specific, and we know we have an international audience.
I got that one. Let me tap in.
Okay,
on
good.
Oh, perfect. Great.
Yeah. So, a couple things. So apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship is a very specific thing, right? It is a federally and state regulated program. It's been in other industries for a long time, like construction, healthcare. I'm from Alabama, so a lot of apprenticeship was like automotive or cosmetology, right? Because it is regional. Because apprenticeship is about jobs, and so you don't want to just be training a bunch of apprentices into a place where there aren't necessarily an industry to support them. So California obviously has a lot of that focus, which is the work that we've been doing with AME, Arts Media Entertainment High Road Training Partnership. If we could maybe put some links in the chat. I saw apprenticeship one in the chat. So our apprenticeship program is the first for animation, visual effects, and gaming. So we have career paths like concept art, visual development, storyboard, animation, rigging, modeling, tech art, effects artist, and production management, which is my personal favorite because I'm a producer. And we utilize an employer consortium model. We're not going to be healthcare where Kaiser can just take, a whole cohort of apprentices. We're always going to be trying to get a couple of apprentices here and there on different productions, right? And we are just one lane. So the Entertainment Equity Alliance is a thing that BRIC, Arts to Work, and Allison in her CDE hat founded. And it is, if we could also drop the Entertainment Equity Alliance link into the chat. So again, BRIC represents the animation, visual effects, and gaming lane with apprenticeship. Obviously, that's not what we do today, but like that is kind of our sweet spot just because that's where we spend a lot of our careers. It's where our friends are. That's where a lot of our partners are employer-wise. But Entertainment Equity Alliance is where you can find all the different programs. Some are more national, some are more state, like Music Forward Foundation is one that is more national. Handy Foundation is spreading out as well. We have some really great partners on the East Coast, RealWorks and the Animation Project. So we are trying to make there be like a place where people can go and learn about these programs and sign up, whether it be for mentorship training or apprenticeship. We have a couple of things today. So at the 10 o'clock hour, I'm going to be doing an apprenticeship employer Q&A. So if you represent a company that is maybe interested in that, because there's lots of subsidies for employers to hire apprentices. And we're working to expand that as well. And then, so if you have any questions on that, we make it really easy because there are wraparound services. Like our apprentices, they get Metro passes if they need computers, if they need software. We've had some amazing software partners like Gnomon Workshop, Maxon with Blender, Adobe. So like you get a lot of free software. You get mentorship, you get free school. So there is a lot of things that you get in addition to on-the-job training, which is obviously the core and the intention behind apprenticeship. Those are all called wraparound services. So with that, at 10 a.m. there's also, if you're a teacher in the chat right now, because we have 3 audiences today, you're mainly, your student, your emerging talent industry, educator, and obviously employers throughout the day as well. But how to make pre-apprenticeship work is happening at 10 a.m. So if you are a student or a teacher and you're wanting to learn how you can align your curriculum so your students are ready to enter into arts, media, entertainment apprenticeships, please check out that. Allison Frenzel will be moderating that. And then at 2 p.m. today, Pacific, these are all the times I'm talking about. Registered apprenticeship programs is going to be moderated by our AME program director, Sochi. And so you'll get to hear not just from BRIC's program, but you also get to hear about the other programs like live event, music production, post-production. So please come and check that out. In terms of overseas, the UK has been doing apprenticeship for a long time, and they do it really well. And one thing that I'm really excited about is this is their first year they're about to complete of doing senior apprenticeship, which is something a lot of women get stuck in that mid-manager role, right? Whether that's for family, there's lots of reasons that women don't necessarily go to that senior director level role, but senior apprenticeship can be a way to do that because they can mentor women to kind of get above that gap. So while there is a focus with a lot of this government funding to be 18 to 24 with senior apprenticeship, which is something that BRIC is really wanting to get into, that's obviously there's no age limit on that. That's a very different thing. So yes, and with age, if you are a protected class or like a veteran, like we would love to work with you. We love veterans. So like there's different groups that kind of supersede the age component with that as well. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Thank you, Karla, for that. I love screen skills. Yes.
And I just want to also say that it's going to be scalable when we get employers to understand that we can help support you in this journey. So right now we have to start out small. There's only as many apprenticeship positions as there are jobs that employers have said, we will try this with you. We're changing systems. This is not baked into this industry. And so while we want to say there's 500 apprenticeship positions, we have it, obviously things ebb and flow with the economy, but ultimately we need the employers to trust that we will support them and help them and customize this to make it work for them. So right now, just, I wish we had a space for everyone, and hopefully in the next 5 years we will. But I just wanted to flag that this isn't huge scalable right now. Like we're still piloting. So I don't know if you wanted to speak to that at all, Nicole, but.
Yeah, I mean, every employer that you see listed on our site represents hours and months and years of those employers building this with us, them advocating internally for budgets and support, us meeting many, many times of how this can work, because it is different for every studio. Like entertainment is not one size fits all. Everybody has their own schedules, production sizes. So like we work very hard to expand that, and we're always looking for more partners. And then also with that, oh, Allison Mann, I had a great pivot to you, but I just lost it. So I think that like obviously apprenticeship is great, networking is great, and it is really gone. Okay, Allison, anything you wanted to tap in, and maybe I'll find it when you start talking.
No, I mean, I want to leave some time for questions, but I think at the end of the day, I'm seeing some of those Q&As in there, and a lot of it is like, where are the things? Like, I grew up in a time where the internet wasn't what it was. Like, I couldn't research. Like, you have all that on the tip of your fingertips. Like, there's resources online. There's people that post on LinkedIn. Like, start building your network. Like, just start connecting with people, big, small, little. You have all these, you have way more resources now. Like you can connect, like start following, if you're an artist, start figuring out who's the artists that inspire you. What movies have you watched? Look on IMDb on who worked on those, find them then on social media. Like you get a little bit of a blueprint, you get a little bit of a crystal ball into like what your future could look like. If you look at some of these individuals past and what art is they're posting for the places that you want to work. So there's these resources. And I saw a question in there about like Canada. Like honestly, right now we're having challenges here in the US because everything's starting to get outsourced to Canada and the UK, like because of tax incentives. So a majority of the jobs in animation are heading to Vancouver and Canada and alike. So if you are international, like that's where I'm a rep now, like that's where I'm trying to find work for my humans here that work in the US. Like it's all about like you have to dig in, like you have to utilize the resources, like you have to understand what the market is and have the agency. Like I think sometimes we wait for something to happen to us or for us, but you all have to be the driver. You have to figure it out. You have to have that agency to be like, I'm going to like connect to this person, or I'm going to like maneuver to figure out this information. Like, do the recon. Like, and if somebody, like, if you're like, my dream is to work for Disney, like, that's great. That's a great dream to have. But it's also about being observant. Like, does your skill set match what that career that you want, or the aesthetic of that company? And there was another question in there about applying for a bunch of jobs. I was a creative recruiter for 18 years. My biggest faux pas, like, do not apply for everything under the sun. It should be targeted, like within your skill set. So we on the back end, just so that you're aware, when you're applying for at job boards, we can see everything that you apply for. So if you apply for anything between, like, say, an assistant to an artistic position to the president of a company, to me, that says you are not like observing what your skill set is. And you're just like, there's a desperation to it, which I get. We can feel desperate when we're like, this is a very intense time right now. And we are like, whether I'm still paying off my student loans in my 40s, like, I get it, like finding that job to pay, but like, you have to figure out like where your dots are being connected. What does that look like? And so when you're starting your career out, start doing the research, start building up your network one person at a time, start like, and again, believing in yourself. And yes, have focus, as somebody put in that chat.
And just on that note, Allison, plug for local film commissions. We're talking to an international audience. Reach out to your film commissions. There are film commissioners that are all over the world who do this work and are experts in the space in your areas. So reach out to them. And if they don't have an answer, they're going to help you figure it out. I always appreciate when someone comes to me with an answer that I don't know, because it gives me the opportunity to learn something or figure out or find a gap and say, wow, we need to work on that. So please, know that the film commissions are there worldwide and are doing some great innovative things. So use them as a resource as well as you're trying to kind of figure out how to navigate in whatever country you're from.
Yeah, and I'm also going to flag, there's several questions in the chat. I'm going to address a question live, actually like 4 questions live that were in our Q&A. But the thing that I never knew existed, and this is national in the US, I don't know where I can't speak to the international landscape, but their workforce development boards are the most incredible resource for all ages. There's no age limit, and they can help you not only navigate job opportunities, but they're not specializing in entertainment. So I'm not saying that by any stretch. But one of the things I didn't know that, like, if you meet certain criteria, they can help you, even help employers pay for wages, right? Up to a certain point. So your workforce boards are your best friends. And I never knew that, right? And it says there's no age limit, and there's no age limit on apprenticeship, just on some of our funding. Right. So that's something really important to note too. Like, in fact, there was a question about a career shifter, somebody who has experience in the industry, but wants to move into another space. Like, that's some upskilling is what we call it, is a perfect model for apprenticeship. If we have a job that looks like it's something that fits the criteria, right? Like, that's something that don't hesitate to apply or reach out. And I don't know if Nicole, you want to speak to that more a bit.
I guess I screenshotted something in the chat at like 9:12 that I just wanted to address because it was a really good question conversation. Not to pivot, but I guess it is a tangent. I don't know. I guess when you've already broken in and you're trying to pivot, it's all about portfolio, right? So make sure that your portfolio is reflecting the job that you want. Make sure that your portfolio reflects the studio that you're applying for, and you got to network. You got to go travel to the places where people are gathering if you don't live there. Even if you're just needing to drink water, even if
I'll take over for a second. Something that Nicole and I talk about is your brand. So if you think about where Microsoft and Apple started, it was in a garage with one product. Like, you have to look at yourself as a brand, as a product, that and the consumer, the studios, they have to buy in what that product is. So if you're like, I'm going to be all these things, then it's you become the Cheesecake Factory, and it's harder for people to figure out how to anchor. And if you're international, the Cheesecake Factory is a restaurant here in America that has everything on the menu.
Way too much.
It's way too much. And to me,
delicious.
it's very overwhelming. I have decision paralysis when I go to the Cheesecake Factory. And I think sometimes recruiters or hiring managers, like at the end, they don't want to tell you what career to have. They want you to be the decision maker. They want you to feel like you have agency to pick, but you have to have to connect the dots. So if you are like, I pivoted my career. So I was a creative recruiter, then I worked in development, in animation, like all in animation and gaming. And then in my 40s, I went into being a rep, but in animation and then in live action. But it was all like, they're all kind of similarly related, but there's a connecting of the dots. I have clients who are like, I do kids and family animation, and now I want to do rated R horror. Like that is a hard, like connecting the dots. But if they wanted to do an animated horror that is a little bit more PG, and then eventually moving into live, like you have to figure out how your current skill set is the like connects to one thing after another. It can't be like completely out of left field. And so just as you're building, you're growing, you're doing the research, you're building your network, it's like, what does your brand say about you? And how does that make sense for the jobs that you're applying for? So you have to be kind of self-aware in that capacity.
And we're at time almost. And, but I did want to end on this warm and fuzzy thing from the chat earlier. So someone, I should screen grab the name, I'm sorry, said, I find persevering as a group is much stronger than as an individual. When you keep your eyes open to others, when you fight alongside others who are all going for similar goals, you can push each other forward when you feel like you are running low on energy. I cannot state the importance of finding your people. I joke, but it's not a joke, but I do joke that the Allisons are 2 of my 4 life partners. I have another business partner from Consumer Association, Rachel, and my husband. And so, and it when you have your people, when the work is hard, and whether that's like your film family, I had a very hardcore film family that we went and filmed things with. It's the people that keep you accountable. When I was in the editing lab in school, the people in the editing lab staying up until 2 a.m. Facebook likes to inform me that I had no life in college other than like, yeah, Mendocino 3006. And it's like 3 a.m., you know? So like finding your people and persevering as a group and finding your get shit done group to do whatever that is so important. Do y'all have anything to say on finding your people?
I just want to plus 100 times that, but I also want to say, returning back to the beginning, I do not want to underemphasize the importance of being willing to do something that's not the one thing you want to do. Yeah. That's like where all of us got where we are today. And I see a lot, I'm like, I really want to be a background artist. Well, maybe you need to start as a PA or something in wherever you can get a job to learn the industry for Nicole's purpose of like meeting people. Right? Because the more different things you do, the more people you meet that could get you to your end game. So like, yes, to that 100%, but also don't be super tunnel vision in where you go, especially if you're young.
And stay in touch with those people. It's not just like I went to the one thing and I met this one person. It's like follow up. I have this one student who like every 2-3 months would send me a new update email on here's like where they were at. Eventually, like I found an internship for that person because they were so good at updating me about, you know, their career path that I just kept forwarding that along to people. And eventually someone's like, oh yeah, send me their resume. So it's like, don't just do a one touch, like truly continue to follow up.
And I would say like for your school, like if you're in school, that is your first network. So back to being kind to individuals and being hardworking, like one of you in like, if you're going to a school, one of you is going to be the first to get that job. And then you're going to use that person, whoever gets it is going to be your first connector. So if you're being not very nice, like that person's not going to help you. But when I started becoming a recruiter, I ended up giving a lot of people from Columbia College Chicago jobs. There is like, and the people that were like my friends or like, and I pulled them from one job to a next, depending on where I was going. So that is your first network, whether you go to a big school or a small school, if you're in the middle of the country or in LA, or if you're in another country, like it's all relevant.
Yeah. Well, Allison Frenzel and I are both moderating different panels right now, so we're gonna go. But thank you all for being here. Please
Yes.
stay. It's all free. Please network, ask all the questions. Appreciate you all. Bye-bye.
Yes. Have a good one.